My Lords, first oral question, Lord Hain.
My Lords, I beg leave to ask the question standing in my name on the order paper.
My Lords, this government is fully committed to ensuring those responsible for the most egregious acts of corruption are held to account. We have considered the idea of an international anti-corruption court, including with 40 international partners in November last year, and have concluded together with them that now is not the time to endorse a new bespoke institution of this nature. However, the government will set out its plans for combating transnational grand corruption in the second UK anti-corruption strategy later this year.
My Lords, I thank the noble Minister for his reply, but it's very disappointing. Money laundering represents over 5% of global GDP, or $2 trillion each and every year. Yet there's no effective mechanism to prosecute kleptocrats, corrupt business people, oligarchs, or their professional enablers. Canada, Netherlands, Ecuador, Moldova, Nigeria, and the European Parliament have recently called for the establishment of an international anti-corruption court. So have over 300 leaders from over 80 countries, including over 45 former presidents, prime ministers, and 30 Nobel laureates. A group of leading international jurists and other experts is now drafting a model treaty. Will the government join with them now to tackle this terrible international scourge?
Yeah. My Lords, whilst I appreciate the long-standing commitment and the work of the noble Lord, where I disagree with him that much has been achieved and much is being done. As I said, we've consulted on this particular issue quite extensively. We continue to engage with those countries that the noble Lord has listed who are involved in this particular development of the concept. But at the same time, as the noble Lord may be aware, indeed other noble Lords will be as well, the UK's International Corruption Unit is a world-leading capability that was set up in 2017 along with the Five Eye Partners Plus. And in terms of achievement, there has been much that has been achieved since 2017. This particular unit has received 247 referrals of grand corruption from over 40 countries, and as a result has disseminated 146 intelligence reports, identified £1.4 billion worth of assets, and supporting the freezing of £623 million worth of assets and the forfeit and confiscation of £74 million. As I've said, our work continues. In 2022 alone, intelligence collated across these jurisdictions supported a further £380 million in stolen assets. We're working in coordination. I appreciate the strong work that the noble Lord has done in this respect, but as I've said, an international institution can only be set up, as the noble Lord will know from his own ministerial experience, with the support of a broad range of partners, and the Five Eye partners are crucial, and we're working very closely with them.
My Lords, in his speech at Chatham House earlier this year, the Development Minister Andrew Mitchell pledged that the government would bear down on the flows of dirty money, which represents money stolen particularly from Africa and African people. Can the Minister tell the House what steps the government are taking to achieve this objective? And wouldn't the establishment of an IACC play a key role in such efforts? Could the Minister tell us, he's mentioned that the world opinion isn't in the right place. What is he doing and what is the government doing to lead on this issue and ensure that we get to a point where world opinion is in the right place?
My Lords, this is an ever-evolving challenge, and I fully accept the principle that more needs to be done, and we continue to work on that. The noble Lord raises issues of Africa and examples again in terms of the International Corruption Unit success. In March 2021, the first £4.2 million of assets stolen by James Iburi, the former governor of the Delta State, were returned to Nigeria. Also in Malawi, a dual UK-Malawi national, Zuna Satar, is alleged to have defrauded the Malawian government of billions of kwacha. The ICU has seized 19 properties in the UK, as well as cars, including a Lamborghini and a Bentley owned by Mr. Satar. These are all examples. In Angola, in Nigeria, the government and this particular unit has seen success, and I assure all noble Lords that we continue to be very seized of these, but working very closely with our key partners, and we are seeing results since the establishment of this unit in 2017.
My Lords, My Lords, can I just ask the noble Lord, the Minister, given that the government is not in favour of the proposal, as the Noble Lord Hain outlines, could I ask him whether the government is working via an international organisation, any of the intergovernmental organisations, to tackle this issue of corruption and money laundering, specifically, and you see that as a useful alternative to a new body, a new court?
My Lords, I assure my noble friend we are. For example, there is a UN instrument that we've been very supportive of, which needs to be further strengthened, and we're working with key partners to ensure that can be further strengthened within the UN context. And of course, I know my noble friend's interest in the Commonwealth. We're also looking and supporting and indeed funding support and structures within the Commonwealth. And indeed, going back to the question previously asked, particularly a focus on Africa is a key part of our work in that respect.
Lords, declaring an interest as a former member of Transparency International UK's Council, and also that my daughter works in the field, may I put to the Minister that a recent survey of 70% of those recently polled across the G7 BRICS countries, whose populations account for the majority of the world, support the establishment of an international anti-corruption court to deal with cases that national governments and their tribunals either will not or cannot handle. Could not the noble Lord, the Minister, whose approach to this is welcome, use this fact to persuade his own officials that this is really worth backing?
My Lords, if I can just be clear, first of all, the noble lady talks of the majority of the world population. I mean, within the G7 context, obviously, doesn't include countries such as India, but we remain focused on ensuring that we work with governments in tackling issues of corruption. On the particular point that the noble lady raises, and I too know vitally the work of institutions such as Transparency International, indeed the FCDO work very closely with them. Such bodies do inform our decisions, but as I said, at this time when we've considered with other partners, including 40 other countries, setting up an international new structure in this respect is not something that has been supported, and it needs that level of broad support. It doesn't mean it's totally off the table. It means that we continue to work in a coordinated fashion on some of the instruments that I've already highlighted, and as I'm sure the noble lady will accept, we are seeing real delivery and real results in terms of the seizure of assets and indeed penalties imposed who commit these particular crimes.
Can I just pick up the point by the noble Lord, Lord Kamel, which is about how do we change world opinion on this subject. Of course, the president of ECOSOC recently said that 5% of global GDP, as my noble friend, has a huge impact on the Sustainable Development Goals. We won't be achieving them because of this level of corruption. Now, what assessment has the government made of working within the UN to raise the profile of this issue? Particularly, have they considered steps to promote a UN convention against corruption as a means of tackling this issue so that we actually do win world opinion?
My Lords, as I said in response to my noble friend, the UNACC is one such instrument. In terms of its effectiveness, that's something which needs to be further bolstered. It needs to be adapted and reflective of some of the challenges which we're all aware of, the use of technology, for example, which feeds some of these particular crimes. And I assure the noble Lord that we are working through all the existing structures, and the noble Lord is right. We need to ensure that those which have a transnational approach, particularly the UN structures, are further bolstered. There is, I think, further meetings planned for later this year, and I'm certainly, as the Minister responsible for this area within the FCDO, very much working not just with key partners within the Five Eyes that I've illustrated, but also further afield, including in areas such as the Gulf as well.
My Lords, proceedings on the Economic Crime Bill, the noble Lord's noble friend, Lord Sharp of Epsom, kindly agreed to the principle of the all-party amendment to that bill on what to do about sanctioned assets, the point the noble Lord Hain was raising. And he agreed to bring forward secondary legislation before the end of this calendar year. Given what the noble Lord has said about the importance of departments working with one another, can he give us an assurance that the FCDO will be cooperating at a regular level with the Home Office to bring forward that secondary legislation? And will he look again at the parliamentary oversight of things like Magnitsky sanctions so we can understand the rather opaque way in which some of those are decided upon?
My Lords, on the noble Lord's second point on Magnitsky sanctions, I'm very proud of the fact that we've strengthened our work in that respect. Later today, we'll also be discussing through a statement some of the additional steps we've taken using those very levers. The important thing within the sanctions that the United Kingdom deploys is also the fact that there is legal oversight. So there's a real robustness to those institutions, organisations or individuals who can feel that they've been unjustifiably sanctioned. And I think that's the strength of the UK law. On the Noble Lord's earlier point, the Noble Lord that he referred to is not only a noble friend, he is also a dear friend, and I assure you of full cooperation across all government departments.